All right, 8 o'clock. Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 8. Halfway through. Ah, awesome.
Oh, that's crazy.
It is crazy, huh? Let's go into talking about audio and the boom and things like that. Mary, hello. When you watched Mark Wilson put together the boom, have you ever seen a boom and know how a boom went together?
No, I was impressed. He makes it look pretty easy.
It's a lot of steps. You're going to put this mixer in your hands, guys. You're going to sit and play with them. We've taken off all of the test questions that ask you how to operate this, like what preamp do I put? This is a boom monitor. We're not going to be asking you that because normally in a TV tech class you would have had this and operating with these for at least 2 classes. And that's not happening. So we're not testing you on that. But these manuals and everything are going to be available for you to look through. You will be asked to watch more how-to videos in order to get ready. So I don't have to go step by step and explaining. We're actually going to physically do it. So this is the layout of the boom equipment. I did this as a student. I took my camera and took pictures of how to put together the boom because I couldn't remember how to do it. And the instructor saw them and said, "Could you make a PDF out of this?" What microphone did we put in the boom?
Shotgun.
Mm-hmm. What kind of mic is that? What type of mic?
Uh, Condenser.
Condenser. You got it. Now, what's the pickup pattern? That one's a hard one. What was the pickup pattern? Ooh, pickup patterns are, that pickup pattern versus polar pattern, that one's going to get confused in your head. So, let's bring it up. Just get a little bit more absorption of that. Perhaps they'll be on the quiz. Smart people would open up the quiz right now and see it. The audio quiz is available. You guys can be answering it through this class as you find your answers, because maybe I'll be bringing up some topics that are covered in both the written audio test and the quiz for the audio. What do I mean by pickup pattern? What do we mean by that?
This is Shelby.
Go, Shelby, go.
Pickup pattern is basically the area around the mic where it hears the best.
Great. That how it works. Marco, what is the two-dimensional representation of the pickup pattern called?
Oh, it's like this like drawing of like the way it looks.
And it has a name.
A polar pattern?
Polar pattern, you got it. There you go. Polar pattern. Good. So the pickup pattern is, like Shelby said, it is the area that's picked up, and the polar pattern is the icon or the diagram that expresses that. Because sometimes they stamp that icon right on the microphone.
Right.
Because you might get something from Russia. We have the Octava shotgun mics, which I'm going to show you, and they're really small. You screw on these little pieces on the front of the little shotgun mic, and it changes the pickup pattern. Yeah, Malith, could you tell me one pickup pattern that a microphone might do?
Omnidirectional.
Omnidirectional. That's a good one. So tell everybody what the omnidirectional is.
It will pick up the sound equally surrounding it.
You got it. So that would be good if you're not sure everybody's going to move around. You might want an omnidirectional. Or you have a group and you want to put it in between them. So the bonus question here is, Sam, would you take an educated guess at what kind of pickup pattern is on that shotgun boom?
I was pretty sure it was an omnidirectional one, right? He's dropping it in the middle of a couple people. Was it unidirectional? Because he just wanted to get it from one.
It's not uni. Sometimes it might be uni, just to only pick up one person at their mouth, It's actually a hypercardioid. So it's a cardioid, which is heart-shaped.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure, Shelby.
So on the PDF that you have, I think it was audio notes too. Don't quote me on that one.
Well, I'm going to go pull it up.
It says the pickup patterns, and it has like omnidirectional, bidirectional, and unidirectional. I was under the understanding that unidirectional, like a subsection of that, were the cardioid and supercardioid, or are they their own separate thing? Does that make sense?
Hey, stop the tape for a second. Shelby's 100% correct on this. I was not clear with you guys that within the unidirectional category, there's 3 main polar patterns: cardioid, supercardioid, and hypercardioid. My whole life was calling hypercardioid unidirectional because it's super, super refined on the axis of what it's going to pick up. But technically speaking, they are all unidirectional categories. The cardioid is the most common because it has a wide on-axis pickup area with a maximum rejection. That means what it won't pick up of about 180 degrees. So that results in really good pickup in the front and pretty good on the sides. Then when we get to shotgun mics, they either tend to be supercardioid or hypercardioid. They both have narrower pickup angles than the cardioid. About 115 degrees for supercardioid, and then really narrow 105 are hypercardioid. And that has about the greatest rejection of ambient sound. Our shotgun mic is a hypercardioid. It picks up 3 to 4 people in a group pretty well, depending how far back you have it. If you come closer with that hypercardioid, the narrower cone of it will be picking up a smaller area. So there you go. Student was right, and I'm making a correction. Bye. We've all seen the length of a shotgun mic. The longer the length is does not mean it can hear further away. The longer the length is means the narrower its pickup. Think of it like it's an 80 millimeter or 200 millimeter lens. Remember how the focal length of those lenses are really long, but what they see is almost like a zoomed in area of your scene. See this picture of the microphone? See these slants over here on this one, on that ribbon mic. So some microphones will have little areas cut out on them, and some don't. Some just have a grid all the way through them. See this stick mic? I can tell it doesn't need a battery. So Jose Andreas, the style of it is stick mic. Okay, it doesn't need a battery. So what type of mic is it?
Dynamic?
That would be dynamic. Dynamics
Okay.
don't. Dynamics don't need batteries. So that's a dynamic, and it's a stick mic. I can tell by just looking at that what its pickup pattern is. See these slots? Those are called baffles. Not just because they confuse you. So Christian, what does that baffle do? He mentions it twice in this video. He mentions it a little bit with this microphone, and then he mentions it with the shotgun video when he puts it together.
Doesn't it? It filters out the sounds that you don't want.
Right. It stops audio on that axis. This would be dead side or less sound heard. So this stick mic has only one little area. So it has one dead area that doesn't pick up sound and the other area does. So what type of microphone is it then? We know it's a dynamic, we know this, and we know it's a stick mic. And then we would also say what its pickup pattern is.
Hypercardioid?
It's a cardioid. Okay, the shotgun mic here is hypercardioid. It hears in the back and it's a little bit dead in the back. Okay, it's like it still picks up a little in the back, so it's cardioid.
Okay.
Okay. So these baffles.
So basically, it's just like hyper focusing on.
Yes, hyper as in super focus. Yeah. So when you mount a shotgun mic on the camera, like you'll see that, guys, with a lot of your DSLR setups, you'll see people and they'll say, look, you can mount a shotgun on your DSLR. Now you'll get perfect audio. You'll get perfect audio recording of hearing your camera move. So when we get into the studio, we're going to super demonstrate, and Mark already does this in a bunch of these videos about why you don't really want to. It's if you have to, and that's the only audio that you can get, then okay, use the built-in microphone if you have a built-in microphone, or put a shotgun mic or a directional mic on your camera, and that's the best you can do. But the best practice for audio is to get your microphone as close to the subject where it still sounds good, because you can get a microphone too close. And we'll be demonstrating that, so you'll actually be able to hear that when we do it. Is that if you get it too close, it's just as bad. Type of mic and what it can pick up, and placement of the mic. You might be moving it, panning it from one person to the other, or following them. Boy, does that not sound like doing camera work, right? You're focusing the audio. So all of this circling around about what kind of mics are and things like that, it's bringing us back into the theme of today. What is the goal of recording? It's capturing sound that we want, which we call signal. It's eliminating sounds we don't want, noise. You are going to hear the term signal to noise ratio when people talk about were they successful in recording their scene. At the beginning of the day and at the end of the day on a location, it's extremely good practice to record something. Sam, do you remember what that is?
Like what the room was going to sound like?
Yeah,
Is that what you're looking for?
Room what?
Was it a room tone?
Room tone. What's another word for room tone? And here's where to find it, guys.
Is it the ambient sound?
Ambience is another word. So there's a couple of different words for this. So there it is, ambient. There it is under terms and sounds right there. Okay, guys? Room tone, ambience, atmosphere. Sometimes they call it background. So Drew Ritchie, who's an instructor who teaches producing class, is producing a small independent feature. They could not get permission to shoot at an airport. So he talked Southwest University up there in Williamstown. They recorded the outside of the administration building, and they replaced the signs in post-production. Some they could replace right then and there that they could reach. They just put some signs up. And then they had extras going in and out of the building pulling luggage. And then they had taxis showing up and leaving, because this administration building had an area you could drive up to the thing. In post-production, what would we add audibly to make that seem like the airport?
Walla sound?
What's walla sound?
Like people in the background, just like, or people talking in the background. Is that what walla is?
Yeah, walla is, but you don't really recognize any of the words. They would make nonsense words very softly because you don't want to recognize it. It's a group sound added to an atmosphere background. So that's a good one. But maybe they would have the red zone is only for loading and unloading. You might have someone doing a voiceover of that. Right?
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I like the idea that you had the sound of people, because we see people. That's wonderful. The sound of people maybe talking. But what else would we want to hear? Mary, what else would we want to hear?
Planes.
Planes taking off.
Mm-hmm.
We see taxis driving up. We hear car doors closing, luggage rolling. Everything that you add in audio, you layer together, and it makes things more real. So if we were then inside the airport, but it happened to be a lobby, but it was a very small room, in post-production, you can add atmosphere, you build rooms, you actually go into the software and you tell it, I'm in a small room or I'm in a big cathedral, and it builds the bounce back and reflected and directed sound. It makes, if you have small area, the sound sounds different than when you're in a big area. I was so fascinated the first time I did that in audio class. I was like, wow. I recorded in my audio booth of my actor saying something, but I wanted them to feel like they were in the kitchen that we shot in. So I was able to go into the software program and build the room, which is approximately 10 by 6. It made the echoes and the reflected sound and the direct sound, it fit into my edit better. It's pretty fascinating what audio does. It is such an art form. When you run the boom, you hook your XLR to a boom monitor so you can hear what's going on, and then the signal is sent out to either the camera that's recording the audio or maybe a digital recorder. We send our boom from the boom to the monitor to a mixer, and the mixer person rides the audio. They take the signal coming in and they use the gain control to make sure that the amplitude, the strength of the signal, of the audio signal, is acceptable and nice and robust. And then they use the volume control, and that's not the volume control for the headsets, but it could be. They adjust that for the going out. So there's input signal that you control, and that's the most important. You control the signal going in so that then you can hear it going out. Because you're all aware of this, when you play something back on your computer, you hit the volume button up or down. But how they recorded it, that quality and strength, you can't control. All you can do is move up and down. And if something's really been recorded too low and you hit the volume button to come up, you are raising, because the signal coming in is too small, what you're doing is raising the room. You are raising the noise to sound ratio. If someone is recorded very well, then I don't have to raise my volume to hear them in post-production. I hear them. If I talk too low and you had to raise the volume of what you're hearing, you would start hearing everything else around my microphone. You would start hearing my computer hissing away. You would hear, I have another fan going, and you would hear the light in my room. You hear all the stuff you don't want to hear. Okay, that's signal to noise ratio. By putting a mic closer to your subject and not around anything else you don't want to hear, you're controlling that. You're going to hear, here, the inverse square law. When we do lighting, we are going to be visiting the inverse square rule or the inverse square law again. It's basically when you move something, a signal a little bit farther away, light waves or audio waves, because they're all part of the electromagnetic spectrum, the sound will drop proportionally, but not in what you think is a logical way. It all drops in a proportion of 1 over d squared. But at some point, it's almost like negated, that when I have something really close, it's going to be very either loud or very bright. As I move back further, it starts dropping dramatically. If I have a microphone here, which is 6 inches away from my face, and then I move it and I double it, and I move it 12 inches away from my face, it's going to drop by 6 dBs. Already it drops half of its energy, and then it's going to drop half again, but its area of how it drops gets bigger and bigger. So in the inverse square rule, if I'm talking here and this is my mic pickup, it's loud. And then if I move back 2 feet, the audio drops by half. But when I drop back 2 more feet, the area, if I get further away, then this whole area is going to have the same less area of volume of sound. So it actually, it gets to a point when you move a mic so far back that it doesn't really matter. It's going to pick up uniformly a bigger area.
So you're saying just as the inverse square law, just as it gets farther away from whatever it's picking up, it's not as strong, but it's picking up a wider space.
Right. A bigger area of that wider space. So in a way, what we do in lighting is we take a big light and move it far back. Then a person can move within that area and not get super bright or super dark. Their light stays the same level wherever they walk. Rather than if I take a small light and move it close, then all of a sudden they're super bright and then they're super dark. So sometimes for a crowd scene, you will take a mic and have it back further in order so an actor could walk from one area to the other and still be picked up at the same volume level. You don't have to keep playing with your gain, the signal coming in and up and down. Because if you start doing that, all of a sudden you hear the lawnmower outside, and then you don't hear it. Then you hear it, and then you don't hear it. And it can be just a bad way to do it. Audio is an art. You get better at it. There are some basics. For most of us, we're just going to put the boom pretty close or put a lavalier on somebody. We're going to lavalier and boom them because that'll be a backup. But when I do use more than one mic on a person, in my recording, I will keep the one microphone separated from the other. I'm not going to lock them together. In a camera, you have 2 audio channels, and they're called channel 1 and channel 2, and sometimes called the left channel and the right channel. So if recording my voice and I keep the left channel in channel 1 and the right channel in channel 2, and then I combine them together, what is that called? You hear it all the time. You listen to stuff in stereo. That's using both channels.
And one channel is mono.
And one channel is mono. We do something called dual mono recording, that we have 2 opportunities in our camera to record, and we will put one person's microphone on one and one person's on the other. Say it's Noah and Mary talking. And Mary, you're way louder than Noah, okay? Because you are. You're not. I'm only kidding. So say you're talking in a conversation and they're recording it, and Noah's mic for some reason was not close enough to him or not a really correct mic to pick him up, and his voice is coming over really low when it's recorded and you're louder. What they will do in post-production is they can raise his audio or lower yours a little bit and it's fine. But if they were intertwined and recorded as stereo where both of you are mixed together, locked, you couldn't do that in post-production. He was saying one line and then he interrupted you, or you said the same thing at the same time. And then we raised his volume when he talked and then raised yours, kept yours the same and then kept raising his. We would hear the room would sound different every time he talked. Does that make sense to you guys? That you want to isolate and control as many elements as you can. And sometimes you don't have that choice, but sometimes you do. We have the recorders that students are going out with can do 8 tracks. So you can record 8 different people on 8 different mics and have a separate track for each one. But sometimes everything has to go into one. So you really have to monitor by holding the boom right. If you're booming and there's 2 people talking and one person is naturally louder than the other, you turn the mic to the quiet, you turn it towards the quieter person. Shelby, did you ever have to do that? You're the boom's in between 2 people talking, but one is louder than the other, you turn it to the quieter person. Yeah. Just to balance it.
Yeah, but I have a question about that actually.
Sure, go ahead.
So yeah, we did have to do that and stuff, but we were on a really small cruise, so they brought all their equipment every time. Mm-hmm. I know like for cameras and stuff, you have like a shot sheet and stuff. Do you have something like that for audio? Like, oh, it's 2 people, I'm gonna need this shotgun mic. I'm only gonna bring that. Or would you bring everything?
Well, that's a good point. When I'm hired as a gaffer, well, on most of the projects when I'm hired as a gaffer or to work in lighting, they have the lighting truck. So they rent enough equipment for options of what you might want to have. You always have to have backups. So there's a basic package you go out. And here, for most small independents and the passion films and all of that, it's the audio person usually buys their own gear and has it, or will say, if the production is correct, if they've respected audio, they will send them the shot sheet. They will bring the audio person on the scout. Your main audio person, whether that's your mixer, your A1, or whatever they want to call that, or your audio designer, will go on the scout, or the AD will give notes to the audio person. This scene, it's a fight scene, or this scene's a nude scene, so you're going to have to figure it out. Do you have really grain of rice lavaliers? You're going to have to figure that out. And they watch rehearsals too, so they know what out of their bag of tricks what to pull out. But that's a really good, but normally, say Marco, say that you decided to get into the business and have your own little gear to go shoot, you would have a basic audio package. My basic audio package would be 3 wireless lavaliers, because in case one breaks, I always want to have a backup, because I'll probably be doing scenes with 2 people. And I would have a boom. And I would have a wired lav just in case that breaks. But my call sheet, remember how you guys are doing the shot sheets and the storyboards? Shelby, if you were able to see the shot sheet or if you were able to see the storyboard, you could say, I think we're going to boom this. Or, hey, that angle they're this big in the set. I'm not going to be able to get my boom in there. We're going to have labs for that set up for that scene.
Yeah, that's what I didn't know if, that's what I was asking, because I didn't know if like you'd follow the shot sheet or if audio had their own separate sort of sheet that they followed.
Audio is sometimes given the script and the shot sheet, and then you make your own. And Marco, who do you have for audio?
Christopher Perfect.
Okay, does Chris have you do punch sheets, or what does he call them?
I haven't heard of a punch sheet actually.
Okay, Gina, what's the term for? I usually call it a punch sheet. That audio makes notes of what they need for each scene, or what the audio elements. As an AD, do you send out notes to audio, or do you just discuss that with them?
I never have. I've always just had a discussion with them, and usually we just do a run through, especially if it's going to be really loud, so that they can get their levels. So with a few rehearsals.
Well, how about hiring or just going to the day? How do they know what equipment to bring or what they need? How do you work with the audio team?
I'm a super backup kind of person. So even though we've probably talked about boom to mixer, I always ask that if they have lavaliers, they bring them just in case, because plan.
So Shelby, most of the time, and I tend to be that kind of thorough I want to know everything. And if a production is not willing to treat my department with respect to give me information, or they don't even know that they're supposed to do a shot sheet and turn it into a call sheet, because it'll tell you what scene you're doing, who's in it. And then there's room in the shot sheet that we're doing right now is not anything like the shot sheets that you can get. The shot sheets can even get a column just for audio. How is it going to be mic'd? In the same way we put what millimeter our lens is, we're going to know what mic we might want to do. Does that help answer that question? It's all communication. Yes, it would be great to know what you're supposed to have or bring, but you try to plan what you're supposed to bring if you're given the information about what your movie is about, and then you have backups. So that does, again, these are great, guys. You're really catching on to the whole theme of today, which is that no, through rehearsal and through, well, like Sam said, just see if your mic's working. But if you're smart, everybody they do a walkthrough of the scene.
That's
They
what I was going to
rehearse it.
say. I do
Yes.
a walkthrough the day before. And then I don't make my audio show up to that. I make my cinematographers and their first ACs show up. But if the audio wants to come, they can. But we just keep in mind where they're going to be for the shot. But yeah, I do walkthrough. Like, I
They
do
can
physical
set up.
walkthroughs.
And that's another thing. You get to set, all right, we're shooting this way. So where can all the equipment go? That's one of the first things you figure out.
Yeah.
And if we're
have
going to
to
move
do
around
that.
the room too much, keep it out of the room.
Right. Like you have to do that. I don't know how anybody can get through life without doing some kind of a walkthrough.
But even on the set, on a big production or even small commercial productions, we do a rehearsal from the top. We do the scene all the way through. Everybody stands and watches who's important. There might be some of the underlings, and that was usually me off still getting gear. And then I would be informed what we're doing. But I would keep my mouth shut, my eyes open, so I could see what they're doing, where they're going to start, where they're going to stop. You do a walkthrough, and the actors may not be even in costume yet. You do a walkthrough, and then you send the talent off for makeup, wardrobe, and if you're on a big shoot, then you have stand-ins. That's what stand-ins are for. They are hired to be the same look and the same physicality, and then they'll dye their hair or put wigs on them so that the lighting people and everybody else who's a technician can plan that. Audio, the lead audio mixer or whatever would watch the rehearsal and make the final confirmation that, wow, I didn't know they changed the scene, so we're definitely going to have to boom this. And they make quick decisions, and you always anticipate and have things ready. It's an ant farm, guys. But sometimes there's only 2 or 3 of you, so you have to actually be much better at anticipating and having your stuff down. And your brain can go away. You can get caught on one simple detail and totally forget. Like I said, I've been on a multi-million-dollar feature, and everybody got so caught up on some sort of drama, or actually it was probably my dolly. We ended up, the dolly turned into a crane shot, so that was like a whole rig and everything, and everybody got all held up and wanting to be heroes and help each other out, that they actually forgot to plug in the microphone into the recording tape and did a whole take without sound.
That's brutal.
Yeah, but what they did is they did ADR. What's ADR, Shelby?
Oh goodness, the one that I probably don't remember. Give me one sec to think.
It has another, you might know it as another nickname.
I have it written down somewhere. I know that.
I know. Like say, I'm like, I write thousands and thousands of notes and I can't never find anything.
Automated dialogue recording.
Yeah, some people used to think it was additional dialogue recording, but it's actually automated because it meant it's being done later by a machine and not being done, the dialogue isn't being done live, which is diegetic. So looping is another word for ADR. And why it's called looping is because audio in the beginnings, it stayed analog. So remember, when sound comes into a microphone, it is converted to electrical signal, but that signal is still analog. It's still waves. So they recorded those waves analog on magnetic tapes. And you would literally rewind to go again. Let's play that, loop it back, go ahead again. They'd bring the actors in, put them in front of a mic, bring down the screen and play the scene. And the actors would recreate their dialogue. And if the actor is no longer around or refuses to come in, they bring in famous people who can do different voices. So you bring in a usually a comedian. Rich Little used to come in and do, and Jonathan Winters used to dub. Dubbing is another word for it. Okay. They used to dub other actors' voices. If someone is not a good singer, they might bring in another singer and still have the first talent's voice, but then sweeten it up by laying in another actor's voice. Everybody see
The best example of that on the planet is the Jerry Lewis movie, The Bellboy, or The Errand Boy. That's the best. Oh my gosh, that's the best ADR ever.
I thought you were going to bring up the Queen movie. I thought you were going to bring that one up because everybody kind of knows that 3 different artists are singing that last song in the movie. It's Freddie, and it's the person who's now doing is part
Adam
of Queen
Lambert.
right now. Yeah, and then it's the actor. So all 3 of those voices were combined into that. So the Jerry Lewis, really, Gina? You went to Jerry Lewis?
It's the best one. It's the best ADR example I've ever seen because it's twice over. You have to see it. It's the best one.
I haven't seen
And
it
in my opinion, it's his best movie.
40 years. Sorry, I haven't seen it in 40 years. So we were talking about ADR, and so if I have a microphone and we're doing a dialogue. So Kristen, we're doing dialogue of your person on the skateboard, and they're talking about how great it is, and we really only want to hear them, so we put either lavalier on them or really shotgun them really close. But it's obvious that he's rolling on his skateboard, so we might want to go back in and make sure that we have that skateboard to include in post. So there's something called wild sound. So as the continuity person will say, okay, that we need the sound of the skateboard. So we've gotten the dialogue and the scene's all done, but let's stop and do wild sound again. So they'll record, they may even turn the camera on or not, and they'll just record the skateboard. Sometimes you turn the camera on so you can then sync the action in. But if someone makes a mistake and flubs a line, they will just keep continuing to record. And in case you don't cover your shots, which I think a lot of young filmmakers don't cover a scene enough from another angle, they'll do a one area, one setup shot, and that will be their scene. And they won't notice, and they'll do the one take ones too. I always feel I want to just give up when I get footage from students and said, well, we just did the one shot and it was fine, so we moved on. And I'm like, no, you do at least 2 takes, one's for safety. That if you have a line that's flubbed, or if someone did like or they mispronounced something, or even said someone's name wrong, is something called wild sound and pickups. You have the actors just stand there and do the dialogue again, and then you just record that dialogue, and then you cut it into little pieces and drop it in your edit if you need to. And so you got room tone, we did wild sound, we did dialogue, walla walla. Foley. Okay, you're having a fight and you punch. You know that you do at certain angles so you don't see the punch hitting somebody. But what makes it more realistic is the sound of a punch. So Foley artists recreate those sounds with props, and they'll watch something. But you can also do that's different than special effects or sound effects. Sound effects technically means something that's already pre-recorded and stored somewhere, versus Foley where they're actually watching it and they're timing it perfectly. But you can have Foley sound effects now too, so we bring them down. So it's kind of merged a little bit, but real Foley is the kind of fun live. And we have a Foley studio at ACC at Highland. So hopefully you guys get to go in and do a Foley session with, we're going to be sharing it with Music Business. So I'm really excited about it. Doing Foley is some of the best things. One of the fun exercises you do in the audio class is you take a clip, you edit a trailer or edit a little piece of a scene from a movie, and you wipe out all the sound, and then you recreate all the sound. You recreate the dialogue and the ambience and the Foley and everything, and it's so fun. It's really a great way to learn how to edit in audio. It's just so fun. Have you guys started that yet, Marco? Or are you guys a couple of weeks away from your project on that?
Definitely a couple of weeks away from that. I've not heard of that project. But actually, we did a thing where, well, actually, the first audio project we had was a sound sync assignment where like we got the audio, like we got the video and audio, and then they were in two separate folders. Like one was just video, one was just audio. We had to find the one that corresponded to each, and then just make sure that they line up and add a sound effect and a music track. I think that was like the first.
So when we edit our project, you're going to all edit your video first. What you do is you edit your video and you lock it. You do all your actions. You're very happy with how everything looks, and then you send it to sound. Then you go and do the sound. So we're not gonna, you can be recording audio if you feel like it. If you want to have dialogue for your movie, go ahead. If you want to have sound that you're going to lay under, or if you want to do music, we will point you to, we have several sites where we have free access to music, and it may not be the best, but if you use a known song or someone else's real song, because we're a student project, sometimes YouTube will let you play it, especially if you put the credit to it, but sometimes they may block it. So that's just it's a 50-50. Sometimes they recognize the student right for work, but the minute you put that on your reel to get a job, you owe that person royalties. See what we got through. We got through a lot today. How to deal with sound in a room. So you will, within your lifetime, either as a sound person or on the set as a producer or on the set as anybody else, you're going to be on a location that isn't optimal. For you guys, it's probably your own house right now. That the human ear blocks out what it doesn't want to hear. It's very selective, extremely selective. It's also very selective about volume and what it's hearing. So our amplitude may say something and our frequencies may say something that we should predict how we hear it, but the human ear is very selective and may not be listening to it at the time. I was silent right then so you could hear what was going on around you in the house. So what are you hearing? Give yourself 15 seconds of silence and then tell me what you're hearing around you.
Hear the fan.
Go ahead. What are you hearing?
And I hear the blinds moving around because of the fan. I could hear the laptop on the table because my table's not very straight, so I could barely hear it kind of buzzing around. And then my coffee machine in the background.
Oh, good. I'm going to have a sip of coffee. Thank you, Dale.
Yeah.
We are selective. Microphones aren't. So if you have something on automatic gain, when you get quiet and didn't talk, it would try to pick up the nearest sound it heard, and it will bring the volume up because it thinks that's a person talking or something, and it'll try to make it right. So all of a sudden you could be talking and you stop, it'll bring up the sound of your computer. And then when you start talking again, you'll be so loud, it'll blow out. So automatic gain is not a good thing to do, guys. It's like automatic focus. It's not going to do what you want it to. So Jose Andreas, what are you hearing? I'm going to give yourself 10 seconds and then tell me what you hear around you.
I hear my AC vent. Kind of hears my chair squeaking every now and then. That's all I hear right now.
So if we were to pick the right microphone, so we put it near you and we only capture what you have, in post-production, we would look and we edit it to that. You're sitting in your room and you're talking, right? Something would be missing. The reality of the room would not be there. So we isolate what we want to hear with our mics. Most of the time it's dialogue. And then we go back in post-production and add atmosphere and add the rustling of your clothes, the breathing, the computer, at a specific level, because when it's not there, it just doesn't feel real. So that's why there's Oscars for sound mixing and sound design. There's 2 different Oscars because they're 2 different parts of what's happening in a movie.
Yeah, so it is like art. I see what you're saying.
It's an art and a craft. A craft in meaning we have to know all this stuff like amplitude, frequency, full back, room, near room, far room, polar pickup, hypercardioid, XLRs, balanced, unbalanced. We have to learn all this technical stuff. Please don't let it overwhelm you. We're just learning the tools. The art is making things real, is like Shelby said, knowing enough about what's going into it, planning enough that you make better choices of the equipment to get what you want to hear. You guys all needed to take a break. And when you come back, we're going to talk about line strength versus mic strength and why that's so important. And that could really hose you in many ways. And then how to take care of a room that isn't what you want right away, knowing that you're going to turn around and add sounds to it again. So it's a silly game. We add light and subtract light. We add focus to where we want it. We take away focus from when we want it. We bring an angle to what we want to see and what we want our audience to pay attention to. But for audio, we do the same thing also.
Laura?
Yep.
Hey, I just added a really small link into the chat for people to open up when they want to. It's a super good example of Foley. It's like a 1-minute video.
Oh, cool. It's not Jerry Lewis, right?
No, it's not. It's not ADR. It's Foley.
All right. Now you're going to have to put it up on the blackboard, man. I have to have it. I have to have a clip to it. So why don't you guys take a 10? Let's be back at 10:05. So I think everybody's back. So the last thing we're going to talk about, and we'll be done in, I'm hoping, 4 to 5 minutes, is what's called controlling the room sound treatment. If you're on location and you're in your room and they start the lawnmower outside, but you're not looking at your window on that setup, or you try not to look at that window and you wait till maybe they'll go away and then you can shoot from that angle, the next setup where you see the window, is that you take whatever you can find in the house. Normally, a good sound team would have sound blankets, which are moving blankets that you just put on stands or clips, or you move pieces of furniture to block sound, you close doors. So it's called sound proofing, is when you block or stop or reduce a sound, and that is putting another object, softening it up, putting an literally blocking something. Sound absorption is like a material that will absorb. So throwing a towel over a humming refrigerator, not the smartest thing to do. You might want to unplug that refrigerator, but remember to plug it in. So if you're on location and they're hearing the compressors or refrigerators going on and off, of course your producer is going to say, go unplug it. The way to keep able to go back to that location and get invited back, because you haven't, one of the big things that always happens is people unplug refrigerators when they're using someone's apartment and then they leave and they've forgotten to plug it in. So, you have spoiled food. You don't want to get on that side. So what you do is take your keys and put them in the fridge, your car keys. So you can't leave until you go find them. And when you find them, you have a note next to it saying, plug me back in. That works every time. It gets very hot when you turn off air conditioners, so you have to turn them back on between breaks for talent. to be able to do that. Nowadays that we use LEDs, it gets a lot better. So there's soundproofing, which is blocking, and the sound absorption. Sound reflects and it bounces and it absorbs, just like we're going to be talking about light. Sometimes if a mic's positioned at a table and people are sitting here and you've got the boom in there, point it at the people and not straight down, because the sound will bounce off the table and reflect, and you'll hear it. It'll be buzzing. It'll sound hard. How we deal with that is if you're shooting my desk and the setup is this, put a tablecloth, put a blanket, put something right there on my lap or on the table that isn't in the shot, and that will help it. It's all about placement. It's all about thinking that things bounce. The angle of incident equals the angle of reflectance. So if you just change your angle, you'll get a little bit better on that. So one of the trickiest things is to have a lavalier. Say this is my lavalier and I'm here and I've placed it for an interview here, but then I keep turning and talking to the person over there. Put the lavalier where the person's mostly going to speak. Lavaliers most of the time are cardioid or they're omnidirectional. Lavaliers work off the chest and bounce the sound. And the best location to put a lavalier is about 8 to 10 inches from the chin down at the breastbone, so that the body, and you hide it behind the clothes, so that the body's chest works as an amplifier. So that's a little trick that I like to know, and it's really cool. The difference between line signal, which is super strong, an amplifier, a speaker, a phone, another recorder, those are line signals. They're very strong coming in. You have to tell whatever you're hooking into, your camera, a mixer, a monitor, anything like that. You have to tell what kind of signal you're putting in, line or mic. Say we're putting in a mic, we have to know, is it a capacitor, condenser, or is it dynamic? Because if it's dynamic, it doesn't need any further help. But if it's a condenser mic, it might need phantom power sent back. It might need, in case that battery wears out on it, phantom power is power sent from another machine back down the balanced signal cables to keep it going. So those are a couple of terms that I wanted to revisit because I know you've gone through them, probably not sticking in your head yet. Okay. So that's it for that part of the Monday class. We then broke into groups and worked on our shot sheets and storyboards. So I hope you get enough out of that and that it's helpful to your written tests or the quiz. Bye.